bells, 5-0's on the way. Put your hand in the tin and two, cause B Fyfe may fire anyway. Oh, jingle bells, 5-0's on the way. Put your hands in the tin and two, cause B Fyfe may fire anyway. Ain't nobody dash through no snow. Definitely ain't for nothing, because we're not getting our hair wet, crushed with a beanie. Over what hills we going? Ain't nobody laughing, Bahhaha. Those ain't bells, but sirens ringing. Anybody's kissing. Oh, jingle bells, 5-0's on the way. Put your hands in the tin and two, cause B Fyfe may fire anyway. Oh, jingle bells, anyway. Put your hands in the tin and two, cause B Fyfe fire anyway. Ohh Girl, those are sirens. Those are sirens put out right away. Notice too many of us. In this low rider, hey, those are sirens, 5-0 on the way. Put your hand in the tin and two, cause B Fyfe may fire anyway. Oh, jingle bells, B Fyfe on the way. Put your hand in the tin and two, because B Fyfe may fire anyway. Oh, jingle bells, way. Put your hands in the tin and two, cause B Fyfe may fire anyway. That's what you do when you have recording information or programs and you think you can write and you just make up crazy homicidal lyrics to classic Christmas jingles, because this is all I've been doing. Welcome to another episode of F.A.A.F.O has a fro. I'm your host, Felicia Baxter. I would like to, in 2024, just dealing or having a firm discussion, even though it's probably in my head, about Parable of the Sower. There's so many themes in this great book by Octavia Butler, and I wanted to make sure I address some of the more serious issues. Although this particular book doesn't directly or explicitly mention slavery, but it kind of does. It says, because one of the things that I realized that there was one point where Lauren mentions that Travis, and I believe it is Emery, were probably former slaves. They, in the strictest sense of the word, no, I don't think, and I still don't think that, although I think Travis is African American, Emery, I think, is Hispanic, of Hispanic descent, and is the slavery that she's referring to the same as the trafficking of Africans and even Native Americans during the height of the transatlantic slave trade? I'm not sure. I think she referred to the debtor slave, or these big companies that set up a cycle of debt, which is similar to what we experienced, and actually my parents and family experienced during sharecropping in the early 19th and 20th century. Because you could never get out of this cycle of debt and owing the man. Something is similar to these big corporate farms. Something is very similar to what may or may not allegedly is going on with Amazon. Or, as I said, in big pharma, not big pharma, pharmaceutical companies, but who knows, big farms or corporate farms, um, the corporate agricultural collectives. Um, what is possibly going on now that we're having all of these people sell their land for these big data centers. We don't actually know what is actually or what possibly could be happening, but Octavia Butler alleges in her book the exploitation of the environment, the loss of freedom and agency, and the resistance and the whole unending plight and path for survival. All of these themes are actually apparent. No, do I think these people? But then we got with when we listen to or notice now, Angola still exists down in Louisiana, probably one of the largest prison farms in the world, and it's been in existence since the 20th century. Um, is that any different than the big plantations of the old South that we know of and that they had a whole war for? I don't know. Is it different than the what did they used to call those houses? The debtors' prisons that we know from Oliver Swift and over in England? And that started Australia. I was looking up just before I started recording the next season of Outback Opal Hunters and the history of of Australia as a penal colony and those workhouses that we know of, and that I don't think we're never going to know the extent of the exploitation that actually happened in those. We're just learning of these Native American schools between Canada and America, where they basically tried to obliterate the heritage of the original Americans. I don't think, I don't know, but I can only think that when I read about the loss of freedom and being control of your own self in this book, it brings up images that I just referred to. And so I think she does, or Octavia Butler basically deals with this loss of freedom in a different way and as a theme of the book. And even though it's supposed to be fictional, it does hit close to home because we're seeing still the manifestations of when corporations are allowed to act and move with no unfettered, as they call it, free enterprise or whatever, at the pursuit of profit. What happens to the individuals that fuels this march to a this supposedly free system? The system is not free because we pay a steep price for the manifestation of power, or power and profit. And I don't think, and it's not worth it, because we see an unraveling of a positive society and a cohesiveness and humanity, just to survive, has to resort to some extremes in order to survive and to be human and to care. It's all because survival of the fittest, or survival of the people that are actually able to tolerate. And how can you what happens when you don't just survive, when you want to thrive, and to be more than what people actually expect of you, or than what is actually expected? I want to move beyond the survival mode. And it's actually okay not to always be in survival. I want to survive and evolve. And I think that is the whole purpose. Basically, the first book of Parable of the Sower is like a blank slate. We basically had the dissolution of conventional society, family, religion, etc. We had the institution of the depravity of slavery. Even though he didn't think that we were equal, even Abraham Lincoln knew that that shit won't right. So we had to, the society as we know it had to be basically decimated for a new reality and to be realized and for humanity to advance. I hope we don't have to get to base camp 1 or to this level of decimation before we realize that we can't keep looking back to try to recapture something when we weren't all of that, and then we could actually now progress and just be human but be evolved. What are your New Year's resolutions? Are you resolved to be anything? I stopped making New Year's resolutions years ago because most of, about what, 95% of resolutions are abandoned by like the second or third week in January. I didn't want to waste my time in anybody's. I really didn't want to waste my time in making some type of resolution where I had no intent of going through with it. So here's the thing. I'm resolved to be conflict. I'm averse to conflict, granted. But at the same time, I know that there's conflict there, and I always find myself on edge. So this is what I am going to resolve to do. I'm going to resolve to be less anxious. I don't say anxiety free and not paying attention and etc. or truly disconnecting, because that's not a way. Humans can't evolve and move forward if they are completely unattached and unbothered. But you can do things to reduce your anxiety. One of them is being consciously intent or conscious intention. That means being aware of what I'm doing, choosing to act, and owning that action. You have to be attuned, and your brain activity has to be prepared for it. You have a free will to say yay or nay. I say in my mind all the time, there's only two things I have to do in this life: stay black and die. Everything else is negotiable. And that really is truly what that is. I know that my recall is biased because I can only recall certain things, or will recall them in certain ways based on my interaction with those things. So the act of looking backwards to garner your steps forward can be a little bit tricky. And if you're always looking backwards, anyways, you're going to trip over the obstacles in front of you. So when you are intentful and you know what is up and you are aware and you can actually look at things from all sides. You know what I mean? And then make your decision and be um um not just resolved, but actually you can be that you made the right decision. You are assured that the decision that you actually, an action that you're about to take, actually is the right decision and it's going to serve you well. When you can actually sit back and take a moment, be in the moment. That's what the whole resolve come into. What is it going to impact you or the situation positively? Have you looked at this from all angles and seeing what are other possibilities? You know, if you made this decision, if you went right or left, and asking the questions to actually, and don't be afraid to ask if you really want other people's opinion. But if they only give you false negative, if they're yes man, you have to also be aware of that. But if they're going to give you altering opinion, not just hater aid, because you don't really need that too, but you can also take the opinion with a grain of salt and see if that will actually serve you well. And looking at what if you did this, what if it actually turned bad? That is a possibility in most decisions and actions, but don't use that as a crutch to not to be inactive, and don't use it as a crutch because you don't because of you're taking on someone else's fear to be inactive. You also, when you are intentful at your own resolve or whatever the intentions are, you actually have to learn how to listen. Because if you ask somebody a question, but you are also engaged in your own thoughts, etc., you have to come up in order to be consciously resolved and intentful. You also have to be a good listener. That means shutting down your own thoughts like a hamster wheel, being able to take in and process the information, and then giving opinion. Also, if that person, whoever you're engaged with, doesn't really is not asking for your opinion, they just want to dump their psychological detritus on you, and all they want you to do is just to listen. I think you can also, instead of cutting people off solely because they just want to dump their own drama on you, because I've done that before. I also have learned, as comes from years of working in a pediatric office in a hospital, I have selective listening or capability. I'm not thinking of anything about my own thoughts about what I'm necessarily going through. I also know that I'm only going to pick and choose to listen at bits and bobs. And it's a gift. I'm only going to tune in if they really want an opinion. Some people just talk to be talking. They don't necessarily want you to solve whatever they're going through. They don't necessarily want you to give your own opinion or a separate action, because it's going to piss them off, because it's going to be so different than the action that they actually took. So the bottom line is, if you're really not asking for my opinion, I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to have to learn to basically say, really, and ask them to give more detail on their own experience. and only offer up an opinion if they are asking me for the opinion. Some people just need to vent, and that's fine. I would prefer if you would do it with your own therapist, but then again, you don't want anybody's opinion. You just want to talk and talk and talk. And if there's no resolution, then there's no resolution. And that's on them. And also, going forward, being disconnected and unbothered, it's not only going to serve, it's not, in the end, it's not really going to serve you well. I will focus on what situation and my own reaction to those situations. I'm not going to continue to engage in anything that doesn't serve me well in the short term, and definitely not in the long term. I want to still place myself in situations that I can see the forest for the trees and not be so laser focused on just the twig on the one tree when I've missed the entire forest fire. Also, you can't get so bogged down on the what ifs and what possibly can be. You can't be anxious or afraid to act because of some unseen force, or there is a possibility of something going wrong. That's life. There's always going to be a possibility of something going wrong. Me standing still is not going to keep that thing from going wrong. When you are actively aware of the possibility of change or the possibility of negativity, you can only get yourself prepared from when that moment actually comes. You can't just be anxious anticipating that moment to come. And you got to keep on living and being positive. That should be the intent, I think, for everyone. Don't keep engaging in things that don't serve you, and being engaged enough to go after what you want and that is going to give you a positive outcome. And also give the community and other people around you positivity too. But don't keep engaging in something that is not serving you, because that makes no sense and is the definition for insanity. And ain't nobody trying to go into this next millennia insane anymore. That is free, happy vibe. I hope it is copyright free, but we'll find out if I get blocked on YouTube. I hope that everyone is joyful as I am now, and that you're starting 2025 with some type of positive intention, knowing that we're only responsible for our reaction to other people's events and other people's actions. I can't predict what's going to happen. I can only hope that I will act accordingly and in some way that protects me and my friends and family. And also know who my friends are and act accordingly. I wish all of you a very, very joyful and happy new year. And here's to 2025.